Strike the harp and join the chorus. Fa la 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 la. Follow me in merry measure. Fa la 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 la. While I tell of Yuletide treasure. Fa la 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 la. Fast away the old year passes. La 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 la. Hail the new year, lads and lasses. La 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 la. Sing rejoice all together.
Well, hello there, everyone. How you doing? It is Christy. It is Sunday, and that means another episode of Weekend Winters as I adjust my sound system to make sure that you guys can hear me, but not too close and not too far. Sort of a Goldilocks moment, trying to get your sound right. Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever and whenever it is you are. Yeah, I mentioned that I'm Christy, and it's time for another Sunday show. Now, I will admit, I'm still getting back into the hang of things. So, first coffee. Coffee. With vanilla soy milk, if I might say. Very delicious. And, yes, it's still that sort of transition time between, the Christmas kind of season, and I'm just going to pause myself in the other video in my live feed, because it's a little bit confusing to see myself not only in my OBS stream, but also in my stream. That gets confusing. Hello, by the way, to the chat. Hello, I know there's only a few people here. Sorry, I really get confused by when my stuff is advertised on my list, because I can't subscribe to myself. So I set up these hangouts, and I'm not quite sure who can see them. But anyway, yes, it's a Sunday show. We are in the weird period. I always find this a weird time of year between like Christmas holidays and the New Year holiday, because you've got this sort of week of time where you're not, well, if you can get paid holiday, that's ideal, but otherwise you've got these sort of like days. In America, it would include the 26th through the 30th, where maybe there's a weekend too, and things are supposed to be operating kind of back to normal, but you've got New Year's around. And in Europe, it's just even more intense because, well, in the UK, they have Boxing Day off. Germany, too, we had the 24th, 5th, and 6th off, and then the 30th and the 31st, so it's really hard to get back into the mode of working when you've just come off 3 days of holiday, which I'm not complaining about at all. I'm just saying that, like, I'm a little bit thrown. I don't really know what day it is. And then the other thing, I'll just ramble about myself for a little bit, is that I've got some end-of-the-year projects due, which I only have three more to finish. They're videos, so it's pretty easy. But they're due, and basically tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And that's fine, but I ended up going into the office yesterday to work on it, so I wouldn't have to push everything onto Monday. And anyway, I'm very discombobulated when it comes to my sense of time and day. My routine has been thrown off. I don't know if you guys find that with the holidays as well. Even if you don't participate too much in the Christmassy things, you still have the effect of it in the culture. And then just before we get on to New Year's resolutions, yeah, I had a very nice, cozy, warm Christmas. I actually feel almost like it's a mini hibernation. That's what I feel like. I go into like a hibernation between the 24th and the 26th of December. So I've got lots of food in the house, and the streets get super, super quiet in Cologne because people are where they need to be mostly, or they're not going out. And so you get a really quiet street and the stillness, and then just, yeah, like relaxation, which was wonderful. On the 27th, I did not want to go back to work, but I have things to do. And in order to pay my bills, I have to do things for my job. So that is the current situation. And yeah. So that's all proceeding correctly and on time. So no worries there. Should have no problem finishing up by tomorrow afternoon. If I do a little work today and a little work on Monday, it should all work out just fine. So how about you guys? Hope you had a nice holiday season. You're an unemployed scumbag, so you don't get that. Okay. Well, I don't think that you're a scumbag because you're unemployed, but yeah, in terms of your time, when you're not, actively looking for work, how you structure that is, I guess, pretty much up to you. So opened presents and played Minecraft through Christmas Day. I think that is like like doing a video game marathon is a pretty good plan for a Christmas holiday. Like I used to watch movies on DVDs. Yeah, and I bought for the Christmas holiday the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship, the Two Towers, and Return of the King. I was like, okay, I'm gonna like Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, or just marathon all the way through. Just go through and see if I can get through 9 hours of the Lord of the Rings. But in all honesty, I don't even like get out the DVD player anymore. So yeah, being online and allowing yourself a binge of Minecraft or gaming, that is, I think, a very good way to spend either the Christmas holiday days or also New Year's Eve, New Year. I find New Year's Eve and New Year, getting onto our resolutions theme, way more difficult as a holiday. I generally, because I have it's like, it's just so boring waiting for midnight. That's my problem with New Year's Eve, is you pretty much like are just waiting. Hello, Mithril. You're just waiting for midnight, and midnight takes a long time. Like, if you've been up since 8 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock in the morning, and you get to noon, you still have 12 hours to wait before New Year. So I generally didn't like New Year. And Minecraft DN fan says Minecraft can be stressful if you don't know things about it. I get lost in caves and get killed in them. Oh no. You need a golden thread to tie to the front door to make sure you don't get lost. Yeah, so New Year's Eve I always find very taxing as a holiday because you go and you wait around until midnight, and then it's just a rush to get home. So I didn't, until I moved to Germany. I never really liked New Year's Eve. I just kind of found it always to be a letdown as a holiday, generally. But since coming here and watching drunken Germans set off explosives all over the city, like fireworks explosives, not Molotov cocktails or anything like that, but yeah, they properly will empty a bottle of Prosecco. I know, because I was with a group of people that had to do this, like, oh no, we need something to shoot our Roman candles out of. Let's finish off this Prosecco, everyone, and then we'll put the bottle down and shoot it out of that. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous and wonderful and insane and bewildering at the same time. I will be going out, hopefully. I've got hosting somebody who is coming to see his first New Year's Eve in Cologne, which I love. So I'm sorry, I'm going to try to interact with a little bit more with the chat in the first part of the show, and then we'll do some heavier content in the second part of the show. So Linda says, for a few years, I watched the entire Hogfather Ministries on New Year's Eve. Yes, this year you've been invited for a party. Yeah, I think that whole binging thing, again, it's a good way to get through the night. It really makes you feel like you've accomplished something, not just stood around a punch bowl with a silly crown on your head waiting for New Year's. Wondering if you're going to kiss somebody, or if the person you came with is going to be there to be kissed, or if they've disappeared into another room. And then you're like, okay, well, I guess we'll stay around for another 45 minutes because you don't want to leave right away, but then let's get going, because it's going to be like after 1 o'clock in the morning before we get to bed. And I want to enjoy my day off tomorrow. So, oh my god, fireworks will be hell for my doggos. Oh, at least he's cute when he's hiding from them in my room. Yeah, I know that it's very, very stressful for animals. I think maybe it doesn't make any difference. I know with Guy Fawkes Night in the UK, animals get quite distressed. But I mean, we're downtown. I guess there's some city animals, dogs, small dogs and things. But Cologne people, they're not going to not set off fireworks because of dogs or upset animals. And it does go on for like a good 45 minutes when they do it. So, yeah, binging on New Year's Eve. I think that's a good thing to do. There was some talk. Oh yeah, so I was saying I'm hosting a friend who's going to come and see his first New Year's fireworks celebration. Should be, well, actually he's here to do research for something else, and I offering a place to stay because I'm cheap. Others in words like a friend coming by. Hey, I've got a couch, and but that means I'm gonna go out. I didn't go out last New Year's Eve. I just stayed home. The year before that, my dad was in town, and that was the year, I'm pretty sure, that the Cologne attacks, the New Year's Eve sexual assaults and the robberies and the groping happened in front of the Hauptbahnhof. So we had gone out the 2 years prior when he had visited me. He's like, I think I'm just going to give it a miss this year. Let's just stay in and have a New Year's Eve indoors. Which, when it's like freezing, it's not the worst suggestion in the world. There's another thing about New Year's Cologne, or Cologne fireworks celebration, and that is you have to go outdoors really for it, which means you're 11:30 at night. It's near freezing or freezing. You're like you're around a bunch of drunken people, but there's also like fewer public services, like the transport doesn't run because it's 11 o'clock at night, and it can get a little bit, it can take a little while to get home if you're walking. And so being outdoors in like near freezing temperatures, and my dad's getting up there in age. He's not quite in his 70s, but he's getting there. And we just went, yeah, let's just stay in this year. And that was the year of the New Year's Eve attacks. And then, like I said, last year, I just had a quiet one. So this will be my first pouring into the streets, going out and trying to find a good spot to watch Germans behave in insane ways. Will be. So I want to have I titled the show, by the way, I've got my very classy clap your hands say yeah t-shirt on. I saw the lead singer of that live in concert. Not in live in concert, actually live in somebody's living room. There are like 50 people in the room or 60 people in the room just listening to this guy from a band play a song. But obviously it's too cold for just a t-shirt. So I have on my wrap, which doesn't really so much match my t-shirt, but it does keep me warm. So I'm wearing that as well. If you're wondering why I look like I'm wrapped up in a blanket, is because I basically am. New Year's Eve and resolutions. So who else I've seen? Hello in the gang. Hello from everyone. What are your guys' thoughts on New Year's resolutions? Generally, I know some people like them or engage in them. Other people sort of despise even the idea of it. Me, I'm kind of on the fence with New Year's resolutions. I've evolved my stance over time. I guess the best way to say it is that I think trying to make a dramatic change in your life from the 31st of December to the 1st of January is probably an exercise in futility for most people, because a change, it takes familiarity. That's ultimately, if you want to change a behavior, it needs to become part of how you operate. It becomes part of your routine. And I would say, obviously, like joining a gym and, trying to do that once a week, probably 3 or 4 times a week, and just throwing that in your schedule suddenly, at first you're quite up for it and motivated. But by 6 or 7 months, if it isn't, there are other pressures on your time. And so you have to, that's when it's hard. New Year's, when you start something out, you make it a priority. But it's when the rest of the year priorities start to push it out of the way, do you keep it a priority, or does it slide because it's really not in your routine? That's kind of how I think about the New Year's resolution problem, or dilemma, as it were. I think for me, on the one hand, there is, so the pro side, I should say, And by the way, yeah, I do have a bit of a stuffy nose, and so warm coffee doesn't help. So if I'm clearing my throat or coughing, I will. If I start to cough, I'll mute myself. But otherwise, I'm gonna need to warm up here and deal with the runny nose that comes with it. My coffee is starting to get cold. That means it's gonna be time for a break soon. But on the pro side of the resolution thing, you have a fresh start. You have a clean slate, as it were. You have a whole year ahead of you. And we package time, which is, the concept. Time itself isn't a social construct. How we organize our experience of time, of course, is a social construct that's informed by things like, a cycle of the day and how we divide that up. But we have this socially constructed 12-month calendar, just out before us. And it feels like this is a good time to make a change or to do something different with your life. And I think what I've moved toward, so I see that as an advantage, a way to okay, from this day forward, I want to do something new. I want to do something different. And having that opportunity every year that's what it is. It's an opportunity. You can take it or you can not take it. Yeah, time will go on. But I know for me, the way that I've been looking at things, I think in the last couple of years, is to get away from the idea of a New Year's resolution and more to give myself, a New Year's challenge. What kind of things can I do in the next 12 months that I have finite as a deadline and, would push me out of my comfort zone? Because that's the other side of the New Year's resolutions. We all I think maybe I'm being too universal here, but I think there are times that we self-reflect and think, okay, I could be a better person. I could be a nicer person. I could be a healthier person. I could be a more patient person or whatever else, or I could be a more creative person. I could be more, if I structured my time a little bit different, I could do things in a different way or do new things. And so I'm kind of toying with this idea of doing a New Year's Eve challenge. So it's not instead of a New Year's resolution, a New Year's challenge. And that is can you do something for the next 12 months and stick to it? That's it. Just do it for 12 months, see what happens, and go from there. Now, the New Year's revolutions, that's nice, Mithril. I think the nicer thing, the reason that attracts me is I'm more likely to do a challenge that I set for myself than not. I feel less bad about failing to do something if I can kind of make up for it. So what I'm thinking about, I always kind of, I've learned a lot in the last year about making videos and all kinds of things related to videos. And I'm thinking I got laundry going. I gotta keep half an ear out on my laundry machine. The thing I'm thinking about for this coming year is there are 12, I still want to do a video on the dome, but it's such a big project. So we have this cathedral in Cologne. Have I ever showed you guys a picture of this for those of you who don't know? And Cologne. Dome Colonia. It just means cathedral. The Cologne Dome. It's magnificent as a building. It is absolutely 100% the most stunning piece of architecture we have in the city of Cologne. So for me too, as somebody who really enjoys cathedral architecture, especially the Gothic period, it is a feast for my eyes every time I go past it. I don't go a day where I just sort of blaze past it on my way to the office. It always is something I look at and appreciate. The thing about this building, it is so old, and its history is so rich and deep. Napoleon stabled his horses there when this part of Germany was occupied by France. It was the site of a Roman basilica before, an earlier church version, before the cathedral itself was built. And one of the things that happened was that's from the side. That's from the Christmas market side. They had actually planned on repurposing part of the old cathedral, or the old basilica, but during the course of burning down one of the towers that they wanted to keep, they ended up burning down like most of it, so they had to just start from scratch anyway. So I've learned so much about the Cologne Cathedral, and it's so interesting. Oh yeah, let's look at the interior, because yes, there's some really well lit shots here. I mean, that's quite yellowy. That's closer to the real life experience. That's definitely, I don't know, yeah, there's some filter or some, is that HRD effect or something to warm that up. That's darker. That's not quite as nice a shot. But I mean, if you like light and light, it's absolutely gorgeous. Anyway, I'm getting all distracted by pictures of the cathedral. This is what a geek I am. And other little bits of it as well. No, that's not a good shot. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I like the effect there with the flare. As you can tell, I don't really like the yellowed out ones as much. I mean, there are days that it looks like that. That's a pretty... Is that still Cologne Cathedral? Yeah, that's one of the tower names. Anyway, sorry, I got really distracted by that. Totally went on a nerd geek out break there. And I think it's just too big a project for my time. For me to tell the story of the Cologne Cathedral would take me literally months of filming, because there's so much history and I'd have to research it and do everything else. I said I was going to mute myself, and I didn't. I'm a big fat liar. I'm sorry. I just coughed in your ear. But one thing, so this actually does tie into New Year's resolutions. I am just babbling because apparently, that is something I'm very good at doing on my own. But this does tie in. But can we? I'm sorry. I just love this building so much. Can we keep going? I will have to cough now, so I'm gonna have to mute myself. I'm back. Hello. Okay. If we're just considering how much I dislike the Catholic Church, it is perhaps almost puzzling how much I love this architecture. But it is a renowned monument of German Catholicism and Gothic architecture. And let's see, construction. And if you guys know about this, because I've talked about this before. But the construction of the cathedral began in 1248, and it stopped in 1473, and then there was just like 4 centuries where it was half done. And then finally, it was completed when there was, I think, the German state was brought together, and there was a Protestant leader, and he basically helped buy off the Catholic-dominated city of Cologne by fundraising to complete the cathedral. So it's the largest Gothic cathedral church in Northern Europe, and ranks number 2 with the tallest spires in Europe. For a while, it was the largest building in the world, but then I think it's the Washington Monument was then constructed and finished. Chuntering, yeah, or chunnering, not chuntering. I think chuntering is puking. We call it chunnering. All right. Happy holidays to you as well, Sophie. Hope you're doing well. Right. So getting back to the idea of New Year's resolutions, what I thought instead was, because I've wanted to do the Cologne Cathedral for years and years, and I never do because I'm lazy. No, I'm just, it's too big a project. I realized that yeah, I can see where I'm going now. Having worked now on a couple educational videos, and also reverse engineering some documentaries I've seen. Like when I watch documentaries now, I don't just watch what they have in terms of content. I try to analyze how they set it all up. And I realized how much forethought there really goes how much forethought and planning goes into, well, the editing process. But of course, you can't edit together your story from your clips unless you have the clips filmed. So, storyboarding all the way back to the beginning and really having a clear idea of the narrative, but then also being open to what information emerges over the course of your recording so that you can flexibly put new things into your story without confusing your audience. This is very difficult to do. It's not difficult in that it's impossible. It just requires a lot of thought. Really a lot of thought. Fingers crossed that you get a job as well. So good luck out to you, or as they do in Germany, ich drücke dir die Daumen. I press my thumbs for you. I was thinking for my New Year's resolution that perhaps I could do one video a month on the 12 Romanesque churches of Cologne. It would be a much smaller project. It would be monthly, which would give me more time to, figure out a schedule for recording and just short story, so that if I had time, at the beginning of the month, I would be able to do a Saturday walk somewhere or take advantage of whatever, if I'm in part of the town, and go and film and have a little 2 to 4 minute video on the 12 Romanesque churches. It would push me in terms of my filming ability, my storyboarding, also my knowledge of local history. Sorry, I'm coughing and runny nose. Can't help it. And because conveniently there are 12 Romanesque churches and there are 12 months in the year, I'm thinking about for my New Year's challenge, again, not a resolution, it's just for 12 months, and then see how it goes, was to, do the 12 Romanesque churches of Cologne. The other benefit of doing this is I'll learn more about my own city. And I wanted to, I've been very interested in the Roman period. I've been very interested in the medieval period. Those are sort of the times when I find most fascinating. But because of this rise in fascism that we've seen, right-wing populism, and the kind of xenophobia and hate that goes with it, I've been learning, unfortunately, more and more about fascism, and recently kind of went down the rabbit hole of the links between the Nazis and Cologne. How did the Nazis operate in Cologne? And that's, and a whole different subject, not a New Year's challenge, but I've certainly felt, and as long as we're just discussing this, when I see, for instance, there's a part of the city called Ehrenfeld, and in Ehrenfeld, as the Americans were, in the year or 2 years before the Americans came into Cologne, and they actually basically drove up one of the roads on the way to the cathedral, and had tank battles with the German Nazis that were defending the city. There was a kind of a resistance movement of people who were anti-Nazi. They weren't necessarily pro-American, but they were definitely anti-Nazi. And they were called the Edelweiss Pirates, or Piraten in German, is my terrible German pronunciation. There were about 13 of them that were executed near the Bahnhof station, near the train station in Ehrenfeld, up against the wall kind of thing. And there's a plaque there for them. And having lived in Cologne for almost a decade now, it has affected how I perceive those events. It feels much closer to home. It isn't this sort of distant history. So there's so much history in Cologne, which makes sense, because there have been people here since 50 before the Common Era, BCE, and then a lot can happen when people are around. But I thought maybe for New Year's, for my challenge, that I would go and visit each of these churches and do a little video on them. And I've been to quite a few of them already. A lot of these are in north and north and the south of the city. They've got some very interesting histories. Looks like the oldest one was founded well, Saint Severin in the 4th century. And yeah, the thing about Cologne is it was on the pilgrimage to Jerusalem or whatever in the Holy Land. And pilgrims on their way to Rome or Jerusalem or Constantinople would often make a stop in Cologne, and there were churches that took advantage of the pilgrimage mindset and became stopping points for these. And because of the number of places where pilgrims were basically being saying, oh, you should visit this church and that church, while you do it, while you're in Cologne, it became known as Holy Cologne. It had so many sort of like places for pilgrimage. And I just thought it would be very interesting that most of them survived. I think not all of them survived the war, but in some form. And yeah, maybe start with the earliest one in the 4th century, 5th century, and look at the architecture and look at sort of maybe some of the history of what was going on at the time. I thought it'd be kind of interesting. So that's what I'm thinking about for my own. I'm curious now about this one. Things that are old fascinate me. Early Romanesque Basilica. It's one of the 12 Romanesque churches of Rome, established in the late 4th century as a memorial chapel. It's been extended several times. The oldest parts of today's building date back to the 10th century. Oh, that's kind of sad. I thought there would be something even older. And wow, holy, no links or no pictures on the inside. So we're getting to the end of the fluffy part of the show because I think it's time to, we could move on. But before we move on, I'm just wondering if you guys in the chat have any thoughts on, I know someone say something about your New Year's resolutions. I just want to look at some images now. The Basilica of Saint Severin. Let's see. A lot of outside shots. Oh, okay. Yeah, you can see here. This is very, very nicely lit. It's a wiki comment. Oh, that's pretty. Yeah, but you can definitely kind of see you're starting to get the pointy arches, but not enough to have like a real Gothic thinness to them from the looks of it. Oh, no, you've got buttresses there. I'll have to go check out the architecture. See how old the buildings, like how far back do we have preserved architecture from that time. So, yeah, cough in your ear. Sorry. New Year's resolutions, guys, or New Year's somethings or others. What do you got going on? So, let's see. That's a cool challenge. I'll have to, yes, that's another thing too, is to look up to learn more about the terms, the architectural terms. Have a motorbike. You've got an e-bike. E-bikes are cool. I saw that those were on sale it's a place called Media Markt for like €200, and they had e-bikes there. Although, sorry, I'm doing a coughing in your ear again. I did see some, we call them dupa, got arrested riding an e-bike on the Autobahn. Some moron in Cologne. I don't know if I can get this in the news or not, but I did see some numpty on an e-bike decided he wanted to go on the Autobahn, and I thought it was in Cologne. I thought for sure. Yep, here we go. Yep, it was. It's not quite Florida Man, right? Not quite Florida Man, but oh, it was in Frankfurt. Oh, thank goodness for that. I thought it was in Cologne. Oh, it wasn't Cologne. Damn it. Okay. All right. So this, like I said, it's not quite Florida Man, but we have our own version of this. So let's just read the story. German police on Thursday stopped an inebriated 27-year-old man who was caught riding an electric scooter on a motorway. The Autobahn, not a motorway. Police in the western city of Cologne said they received numerous calls at around 2:20 a.m. reporting a man driving an e-scooter on the hard shoulder of the A4. The police located the man within a few minutes and put an end to a dangerous situation, Cologne police said in a statement. German news agency DPA reported that the e-scooter rider was still he was still holding a beer. I shouldn't laugh because drunk driving is seriously dangerous, but he was like on the hard edge of a road and I think pretty far away from everyone, but this is so dumb. He was still holding a beer when he was pulled over, but a police spokesman told AFP he could not confirm that detail. The rider told police he ended up on the motorway by accident. The blood test later showed the man had an alcohol level of 1.3 per milliliter, more than twice the legal limit for car drivers. He now faces a drunk driving charge. Yes, and by the way, this is the point. E-scooters are scooters. They are a motorized vehicle. Do not get on them drunk. Do not get on them impaired, either by prescription drugs, non-prescription kind of drugs, or any kind of intoxicants. Let's see. The Autobahn motorways are famous for their long stretches without speed limitations, although e-scooters are only allowed to go up to 12 miles per hour. The use of electric scooters has mushroomed in Germany in recent months, as in many other countries. While users hail the ease with which they can zip through cities, critics complain the scooters clutter up streets and are less climate-friendly than they appear. They should be banned from motorways because you can't possibly go fast enough to keep up with traffic. But there you go. Cologne's very own version of Florida man. Drunk on his e-scooter with his beer still in his hand. What are people thinking? Seriously. That is just not safe. I mean, so again, laughing because, come on, that's funny. But don't do that at home. Don't do that at home. All right, so Sophie's resolution is to cycle or swim more. That's good. I think that's good, especially like if you can, it's so much fun. Christy, what do we talk about? The Hawthorne Project got funded for 4 years. Hawthorne Project. Okay, I'll look that up. See what that is. I'm open to interacting with the chat, especially when I don't have a show planned. Okay. So let's see. We invite women recovering from substance abuse to join us for our weekly woodland sessions to build self-confidence and self-esteem. Throughout the program, we develop skills and confidence, support ongoing recovery. It's funded by the National Lottery Fund. That's brilliant. And free to participant. So it looks like you get outside walking. Is that it? Offers the opportunity to step outside of their day-to-day lives and spend some time in safe spaces learning new skills, creating positive social connections, and a break from their focusing on their addictions. This sounds fantastic. Yeah, look at this. It's like Girl Scouts for grown-ups, which I'm not making fun of. I had a great time as a brownie and a Girl Scout. I learned how to make fires, not from sparking things like flint and rock. I still have to use matches or a lighter, but at least if I've got modern technology, I can get a fire going. They learn woodland skills such as fire lighting, outdoor cooking, plant, wildlife, and birdsong identification, crafts, and tool use. These are all taught in a way so as to improve the confidence and encourage peer support and teamwork, and of course to be enjoyable. Wow, this is fantastic. So I don't want to that's a fantastic sounding program. I don't want to sign up. I'm just kind of wondering, can you donate to this? No, it looks like it's funded already from the community fund. But thank you for that. That's a fantastic looking program. And I think there are things that we do in our childhood that still provide joy. I have those arty coloring books. Maybe I'll bring one back. I think I've shown them on the show before, but one's like an Art Deco one that a friend gave me. Another one is like a really elaborate autumn colors and leaves and stuff. And it's very soothing to color with colored pencils. And to be honest, for me at least, I find it like completing a section of it like very rewarding, and I can break it up into small tasks and do like this water pitcher and this leaf and this thing over here, and like over time complete it. I actually haven't completed a single page, but I find it very soothing when I do. So yeah, resolution is to cycle or to swim more. What I found really helpful was, yeah, just planning. I started walking. It's free. It's free to walk as long as you have good shoes. So not entirely free, but if you have comfortable shoes, to walk in and out of the office. It was also a good time. I was like listening to podcasts or clearing my head or maybe reading some emails and thinking about getting organized for my day. But I did that for a month. I actually lost quite a lot of weight just walking around. So yeah, cycling, if you enjoy cycling, get on a bike. If you enjoy swimming, get in the water. Doesn't matter what exercise you do as long as you enjoy it. And it doesn't matter what time of day you do it as long as you do it when you've got the energy. So, yep. Love my Florida story. Friends in Stuttgart who have jobs driving brand new cars all over the Autobahn. Wow, that sounds fun. The e-bike is fun. I agree. I've been on one of them I signed up for, and the only thing is I'm not very confident with road signs in Europe because I've never properly taken the test. So I have used e-bikes I think about 2 or 3 times now, but I use them in areas of the city that I know very well, and also areas of the city where I know there's going to be a bike lane. So you also do coloring. That is cool. And you have several coloring books. Yeah, it's like, it's, when I first heard, people call it art therapy, which is not it's not an unfair name. It's not an inappropriate name, not unfair, I think. But it's just sort of a calming way to be very present and mindful in a task and become absorbed in it, and keep your mind occupied, which I think, especially for somebody with an addiction, I think that they say the physical part of it is almost the easier part. It's the psychological part. It's the changing your mind and changing your habits. And so giving you something that takes your focus and attention so that you're not thinking about things that are bad for you, and instead you're focusing on something that brings you a form of pleasure and maybe a sense of accomplishment in a very small way, but still a sense of accomplishment. If you paint a wall in your house, you have an entirely new wall color, so you might only have one of the 3 done, but you've got one done. So like there is a sense of accomplishment. And I think that for me, at least when I do it, I find it satisfying, like a little reward. There's a group of radical herbalists without borders who help refugee women of Bristol, for example. That's amazing. Writes, I'm just going to say Chalk, because your name is very, very long and the letters are small from where I'm sitting. Mithra writes, we have a long stretch of dual carriageway near us. Some local mechanic took clients an M-Series BMW out and hit 140 miles an hour. The idiot filmed himself and put it on YouTube. That's really, really dangerous, The morbid joke of what they call motorcycle riders, organ donors, without helmets. What do you call a motorcycle driver without a helmet? An organ donor. I should try Twilight Gardens by Maria Trolley. She's a good illustrator. Okay. I don't even know where to... I guess it would be online. Most of the ones I have so far have been gifts, and now I'm going to have to clear my throat again. He got fired shortly thereafter. Yeah, and the guy who was on the mechanic. Yeah, I would imagine he should be. And you have a good bike and you can cycle for miles. That sounds really also very nice. When my dad visited, he started this thing where he was walking. He wanted to walk 5 miles every day. And in Cologne, he could, because he would literally just pick a direction and start walking. And everywhere he went, for like the first week or two, in every direction, was an adventure. It was new. And so even though his feet were moving, his eyes were keeping busy. He was thinking about where he was in the city relative to where he was, get out his phone, make sure he knew how to get back home, or if he could take an U-Bahn or whatever, or he was in the neighborhood of a shop that he wanted to check out. And he found it really easy to just get out every day and do, 2.5 miles out, 2.5 miles back, 5 miles. Boom, Bob's your uncle. But when he went back to his life in the country, he said it was just really boring because he lives, he lives down a dirt road, like literally like a dirt road that goes on for, I don't know, a tenth of a mile or something ridiculous. And as a consequence, it was the same view every single day. And it just became much more difficult for him to feel motivated to go out and walk 5 miles when it was just walking 5 miles out to the road and then turn a direction and see the same thing you can see in, whatever vehicle he's driving. So that's also an interesting psychological component. If you enjoy biking in, where you are and it's very beautiful and you kind of forget and sort of get absorbed in it, that's really great. People are so stupid. Did he get nicked? Oh, we were talking about the 140. Oh, that's so annoying. This is so gross, you guys. I really don't like winter. All right, let's see. I think it's going to be time. So it's a good lefty. Yeah, Bristol is a cool lefty community, by the way. I like Bristol a lot. I think what I'm gonna do is, we've been going for 52 minutes. My left foot is starting to lose sensation because I am all curled up. I've got my exciting t-shirt. I might just put on my jacket after this. It might be easier. I'm gonna go take a break. I'm gonna warm my coffee, and I am going to, think about what to do for the second half of the show. I had a little bit of a thought, if people wanted to go and break down Sargon's impeachment video a little bit more. I know Kevin and I did a short reaction in the last happy hour when he was so drunk. It was very funny. Came into my, we were messaging on Facebook later the next day, and I had to explain to him again all about, like, he identified the problem with Skype and videos and all of that. Anyway. He didn't seem, either he was playing, he didn't remember, he didn't actually remember we had this whole conversation. Anyway, so if we did the Sargon thing, there's a lot of things in Sargon's video that he just skips over. So I thought we could do live fact checking of that and go a little bit more into depth in what he's not looking at. Otherwise, hold on. All right. We can do another PragerU video, or we can look at bookmarks. So, thanks for doing this, Christy. Do you mean doing a Sunday show? Chalk. Is it okay if I call you Chalk or Chalky? Yeah, that's what I do. I'm a YouTuber. I also have to say, I feel bad. Well, I see Dusty Smith, and he's talking about, like, prep for his show and the research he does, and I just feel, well, of course, he asks for money because it's his livelihood. So, when he does a show, he's very much in there to be entertaining and to make money, because that's, what he needs to do to live. I'm doing this as a hobby, but I do so much less work. Like, I don't want to say I don't put thought into it, but I'm to the point now where I will happily go live, and as long as I'm not coughing at you guys. Yes, a Sunday show. Okay. We can just riff. Like, I have the confidence to just be on air and come up with stuff, which is a little too much confidence. I should be a bit more nervous. I should respect live streaming a bit more than just go, I'll open my bookmarks and something will turn up. Which, by the way, oh gosh, speaking of which, you guys haven't seen, you've just been looking at me this whole time. So, sorry, I guess you haven't had anything. Oh, sorry, you didn't see any of the pictures I was showing. This is the problem with going live. And nobody in the chat was like, Christy, what pictures are you looking at? So, yeah, cheap show. What is going on with this? What is going on with this nonsense? But now you've got things to look at. And that's not just me looking at a screen. I clearly need to be more professional about that. Okay, so be right back. Cup of tea takes longer than a coffee fee. Okay, yep, fair enough. So, now that I finally got the right screen on, how about I turn it off and we'll go back to some the end of the year jazz music. You guys can tell me, have a think about what you want to do for the second half of the show. If you have an opinion, if not, we're just going to see what happens and see if I can deal with looking at Sargon's face or not. But yeah, let's go ahead and I'll give you some Christmas music. We will be back. Let's see, what time is it now? Hello, lonely wolf. We are actually just going on a break. So it's 10 to, let's say, it won't be more than 10 minutes. It won't be more than 10 minutes for me to make a cup of coffee, stretch my legs, do whatever else I decide I need to do. And so I promise, for the rest of the show, now that I've got the right view up, you will see the screen from now on, as opposed to just me looking at pictures. God, I'm an idiot. It would be helpful though if people in the chat pointed out when I'm being an idiot, because I do have the chat up. I always have the chat up, as you can see. And I'm talking to you. So e-bike is not your thing. Okay, you guys talk about e-bikes. Your normal cycle. Okay, that's fair enough. If it's have a bad inside on the road, yes, and e-bikes do require very good pavement to drive on. You guys enjoy that. I'm gonna enjoy some coffee and trying to not cough down the mic at you in the second half of the show. So we'll be back in a bit. And I need to turn the music up. Do. There it is.
Jolly old Saint Nicholas, lean your ear this way. Don't you tell a single soul what I'm going to say. Christmas Eve is coming soon. Now, you dear old man, whisper what you'll bring to me. Tell me if you can. When the clock is striking 12, when I'm fast asleep, down the chimney, broad and black, with your pack you'll creep.
hello again there, peoples. It's me, I am back. Hello. I see you've been talking in the chat skis. So I'll have a look at that before we move on, because you guys are the star of the show, really. You guys, yes, you are the star of the show. Also, Kitty is not as big as a fireplace, and I don't like it when my things are not perfect, so I just made Kitty a little bit bigger. Alright, so let's see. I'm going to catch up with the chat first. And yeah, you guys can see me, you can hear me, and you can see my screen. So that means I'm running like a professional, well, not a professional YouTuber. I am hardly a professional. Competent amateur is perhaps a better phrase there. So let's see. What were you got a weak side? Started looking into them once you tried it. What are you hooked on? I don't know. I can't tell. Oh, my name is Vicky though. Okay. Well, Vicky, I'm never gonna remember that if it's chalk. I'll try to remember Vicky. I will try to remember you. It's not offensive to. I mean, it's not like personal against you. It's just I tend to like associate names with what I see on screen. So anyway, e-bikes is what you're talking about. And Lonely Wolf is back on Twitter. Welcome back to Twitter. No more trolling of hard right-wingers until I feel like I'm out of trouble. I'll just have to tweet about cats and Star Wars. Well, I don't know. Tweeting about Star Wars can be pretty dangerous. As I cough down the mic at you guys. But yes, Twitter is definitely not a place where you can be obviously aggressive. You have to. It's very good for passive aggressive, kind of shady comments. Not shady as in threatening, but shady as in, as this phrase is, dragging someone for filth. Just, yes, you have to be a bit more clever than, what did Kevin, like, I hope you get hit by a bus. You can't say those things on Twitter anymore because people will report you. So, yes, Twitter is a good place to practice patience. And welcome back to Twitter. Please don't get yourself banned, Lonely Wolf. Please stick around. So, tweeting about Star Wars could get you in trouble. Yeah, see, Mithril's already ahead of me. He's they? I don't know why I think Mithril is a guy. I just think that's maybe because of the M, and I think of M names as being masculine names. But anyway, Mithril, they were way ahead of me. Just made a new Twitter account, but suddenly got anxious about going back. Well, you don't... Oh, we can talk about The Witcher, by the way. I watched that entire series. I think the thing about Twitter is if you have a terrible comment you want, just tweet it out, but then don't send it. Or if you do hit send, just delete it right away. It's too tempting with instant gratification. But if you can learn to put some okay, I'm not going to respond to this for 5 minutes and then keep reading your Twitter feed, you might find that the desire to respond fades. This is how I have managed to avoid. Occasionally I will get people who try to get me on a 12-hour thing, but I've never lost an account. And generally the things that I get reported for are BS anyway, like quoting Sargon's BS or calling June out for her racism. So anyway. Has anyone else seen the Witcher TV series? So can we talk about the Witcher, you guys? Maybe this will be only for a couple minutes. And I'll see what you guys say. Don't bother with social media. Too much commercial surveillance for my liking. I'm pretty much off of Facebook at this point. And I still go to the Facebook group for the happy hour because you guys are awesome and the coolest people hang out there. But in terms of actually looking at my Facebook feed, what's the point? It's mostly just ads. Honestly, I have an easier time just reaching out to people via Facebook to contact them than to try to keep up with them on their lives because there's so much garbage on Facebook. So I've been encouraged to get into Instagram a bit more, but I just pictures. It's so much effort when I can just type. I tend to be a word person, more than taking pictures. But anyway, asking if it's going worship the books or the games, not about okay, inconsistencies. All right. So the you won't remember. Okay, Vicky. See, now you're telling me, so I will. No. We'll see. Fingers crossed. Let's see what happens next week. Yeah, the Witcher series I thought was interesting. I wasn't disappointed with it because I had no expectations. I thought that it did a really good job in a post Game of Thrones world to create something that wasn't like a cheesy sword and sorcery kind of world. I think with those it can easily slide into cheesiness. And the one thing that I did find a bit unusual, maybe is the word I'm looking for, is that they generally, like across the series, don't swear much. Swearing is not. Yeah, I can tell you about The Witcher a little bit. Swearing isn't something that characters tend to do, but every once in a while, the Witcher character will just bust out the F bomb. Just like F bomb, F bomb, like once an episode, and it's so out of place. It's just such a. It's if they had, like, if you're watching Die Hard, and John McCain is swearing, and the cops are swearing, and the baddies are swearing, if they're doing some mild profanities, then when they drop the F bomb, it's not such a big deal. But this show is like just nothing, and then F bomb. And it's not I'm not being prudish. It just seems to stand out. It just for its profanity, and I guess that must just be part of the character transfer. And maybe they just decided to use their F bombs. Oh, a little bit of sirens in the background. But otherwise, yeah, that I found was weird. But of course, that's the worst and most distracting thing. It's hardly worth not watching the series over. I think we can look it up. Yes, obviously very high in the Google searches, Witcher the TV series. Let's look IMDb instead. All right, Wiki, Netflix, IMDb. I would recommend watching it. I think if you've got some time, and if you like Game of Thrones, this is not Game of Thrones. I will tell you that much. This is not Game of Thrones. You're not going to get as many characters. You're not going to get all kinds of plot lines that you need to keep track of, at least not in the first series. In the first series of Game of Thrones, you had the Starks, you had the Lannisters, you had the whole, Bran, I don't think this is spoilers here, it's episode 1, Bran becoming paralyzed, and the whole thing with that, and the Jon Arryn, death, was it suspicious or not? And there's so much stuff going on. Like, The Witcher is not like that. It is set in a fantasy world. It has elements of, I'd say, modern politics or modern political challenges. One interesting theme that I would say it doesn't really change the story, but it does add a freshness to it, is the fact that in one of the major kingdoms, women seem to rule. The power is matriarchal, which from a genetic, from an offspring point of view, there is a serious argument to be made that when it comes to lineage, you always know who the mother is. Unless, of course, the babies have been swapped out in some sort of changeling, conspiracy. You can until DNA tests, you could not be sure of who the father was. So having an authenticity, a line of power that runs through mothers, in terms of carrying on a certain genetic, line here, it does make sense, at least. It's not preposterous to understand if legitimacy or the family line was incredibly important to you. It makes way more sense to trace things maternally than paternally. But yes, Geralt of Rivia, who's, it's kind of an awkward name, but what are you gonna do? He's played by, is it Henry Cavill? Yeah, and I think that's the other thing. Okay, Henry Cavill is great. I actually think he does a really good job in this. And so the acting from him, I think the acting just generally, all the way around, is very strong in this. But again, it's just these weird F-bombs that he threw around. At least once an episode that just kind of I started to watch for them because they were so unusual. Game of Thrones was like Bold and Beautiful, but with dragons and shit. kind of, yeah. With instead of I know with Bold and the Beautiful is I'm thinking Young and the Restless, where they like ran a makeup company from Geneva, Wisconsin, because Geneva, Wisconsin, Lake Geneva. I don't think there's a Geneva. There's a Lake Geneva. Anyway, I think it was like a made up city. Yeah, so you basically find this world where the premise of The Witcher is that Henry Cavill plays Geralt of Rivia. He is a mutant who is not he looks human-like, but he's got some different powers about him, and he has the physical ability to fight monsters. And in this universe, there are a lot of just sort of wild monsters as well as bad people, but monsters, when he kills monsters, he's thinking more of non-human types of magical creatures or other creatures. And then there's some, let me say, power politics going on behind the scenes with kingdoms that are debating about whether or not to have power, or not to have it, but how to exercise it, or who to ally with, and that kind of thing. Two of the main characters are women. So you've got Henry Cavill here, but then you also have this blondie chick over here who's like a princess, and this one here who's what's her role again? It gets mixed up because there's a lot of brown-haired, brown-eyed women in this series, and I kind of didn't pay very much attention the first time I watched it, but she's important for some reason. I can't remember. It's already gone out of my head. Like if I saw previously on The Witcher, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's right, that's our character. And so in that way too, women's stories come out, and women have more agency in this world to operate than like in a Game of Thrones kind of world, which was based a lot on just like seems like on pure battles and power politics and brutal power politics. Yeah, that was The Witcher, and I think that's all there is to be said about that. I hope that was the Yennefer is a sorceress. Yeah, oh, that's right. Yes, thank you for reminding me. Yeah, this one here, who starts off, well, basically, she does not start off as the hottie that you see her in this picture. She starts off as a sort of a kind of a rags to riches tale, where she is an underdog, but with a possible spark of talent, and through her trials and tribulations, she acquires a certain amount of power, and also a rockin' hot bod and great cheekbones. And then she's got to make some decisions after that. So yes, thank you. Thank you for the reminder that she's a sorceress, because I literally couldn't remember. But as soon as you reminded me, it all came flooding back, just like that part of my brain was turned off. Yeah. I'm a major soap opera junkie, still following Days of Our Lives. I've got a thing for the Phoenix-type mythology of always coming back from the dead. Yeah, General Hospital did that too a lot in the US, I think, where they brought people back from the dead. So there's a very strong element of anti-racism. Yeah, kind of like an anti-bigotry. I mean, I can see where you're going with the anti-racism stuff in the Witcher mithril, about prejudice and bigotry, judging people by word of mouth or by not understanding their actions fully. I think it's not, there are elements of it, kind of like I would make parallels with X-Men, although they're talking, of course, about like Nazis. In the first part of it, the Nazi idea of a different race and and all of the bigotry that comes with that, and then that's shifted over to the discussion of mutants and non-mutants, or humans and mutants, however you want to structure that. And the human mutant bigotry angle can allow a dominant population like white women and white men to more, like through fantasy, I think, identify more with an outgroup than they can in their real lives. And so that's why, at least for me, like the X-Men was very interesting as an experience the first time I saw it and saw the stories, because it allowed white people like me to identify with a character, which were the mutants, but were also oppressed by other other members of the dominant group. And so you get that element of racism. And I think the elven people are directly treated as a subhuman race. Yeah, I guess, the thing is, I'm not disagreeing with that. It's just the elves don't really come into it from what I remember of The Witcher. Like, there's the one particular incident where he gets his butt. It doesn't really matter. Sorry if I'm spoiling it. He has an interaction where he doesn't kill everybody. Instead, he gets taken prisoner. Okay, so that could literally happen at any point in the story. I don't think that's a spoiler. And I remember there being a big discussion about the elves in that particular episode. I just don't remember it being throughout the entire thing. So, yeah, and I'm not saying it's not anti-racist. It definitely has the ability, if you're watching it, especially I think if you live in a white bubble and a snow globe of white people like I did, then having characters that you identify with who are members of an outgroup, I think is very important for empathy growing up. I think it's very powerful to shape your experience of empathy if you can, through fiction, identify with a class or a group that is oppressed in a way that in your real life or in your experience of the world, you never will. So anyone else got anything else in the chat? So I would definitely say, Vicky, that you should, give it like 2 episodes. If you have Netflix, it's like 8 or 9 episodes long. So as I give it 2 episodes and see what you think. Side question, is dog owner percentage going to go up as a result of Cats the movie? An interesting proposal for a PhD out there. Yeah, oh, you're going on the books and the games, Christy. Okay, yeah, Mithril, yes. I'm only going off of what was in the TV show. So there might be, obviously in a book or a game, you get much deeper opportunities to discuss the social structures without delivering heavy exposition. Because you could just write an entire descriptive paragraph or a descriptive background, whereas in a television show, to do that kind of work, you have to have somebody delivering that narrative or having a voiceover, which is boring AF. So yeah, if you've got a much deeper experience of The Witcher lore and world than I do, I'm purely going off of what I've seen on the TV series. So Cats, the musical. Yeah, that sounds terrible. That sounds awful. I definitely won't be seeing that. For sure. No interest. I haven't been to the cinema for a while, but it will not be to see Cats. I'll tell you that much. I think it was probably quite postmodern, it sounds like, for its time. It sounds like, because it has similar themes to other shows. I think there's like a chorus line a little bit about the background, but also this sort of lack of structure. It was probably more culturally significant in its day. And it doesn't sound like they've done a very good job translating the stage experience to film. And so I'm going off of a couple reviews I've seen, but one of the reviews, I can't remember. I can do a shout out to this guy because I don't remember his name. I like his videos, but I never remember what his name is. He was saying that it would have been nice to see the dances or choreographed as if they were a musical on stage because they're probably more impressive. This guy, Jeremy Jones, yes, he did a Cats review that was like, is there a plot to this movie? And apparently the answer is no, not really. And yes, many people dislike Andrew Lloyd Webber, not for anything he's put on stage in the West End, but for personal reasons, which is fair enough. So, I don't know if anyone's going to own more dogs because of Cats, but I do think that the musical will be doubted as a movie format because of it, despite the success of something like LA Story. Also, from what I recall, I think In the Heights is, yes, going to be a movie in the cinemas, in the kinos, as they'd say. All right, so you might be going, what is In the Heights? In the Heights is the first, I think, Broadway musical. I think I can maybe put this on without putting on the sound, perhaps. done by, ooh, that's really, really fuzzy, because we were watching Sargon, and I didn't want to be overly demanding on Kevin's broadband, or my broadband. But yeah, In the Heights was the first Broadway musical put on by Lin-Manuel Miranda, and I think it wasn't just Lin, he was collaborating with the same people, some of the same people he worked with to develop Hamilton. And this was his first hit. It's not working now for some dumb reason. I'll try refreshing it. I think that musicals can work in the cinema if, well, you can't just sort of throw it up there and expect the music to kind of carry it for you. I think there has to be, it has to be an adaptation. And this is something I would like to see because I'm interested to know. I know that Lin-Manuel Miranda recorded one of the live performances of Hamilton with the original cast in it. I think he might have done it in conjunction with or for or somehow linked up with PBS. And I'm interested to see if he's going to, when Hamilton comes to the theater, to the cinema, and Hamilton will definitely, it might be 10 years because he'll want it to be everywhere as a musical first. That's what he intended it to be. But at some point, it will make the leap to cinema because it should be universally available. The music of Hamilton should be not dependent on you living near a place where you can watch it live. So I'm hoping that with In the Heights, which you're kind of watching the musical thing for now, looks pretty exciting. It looks like it has the sort of dynamism of a musical without being just people randomly breaking into song. To see how that goes over. So I'm going to be, looking forward to that. Sunshine on Leith, that I don't know. But if you liked it, and, you said you don't have to be a fan of musicals, maybe it can just be a good movie that happens to have music in it. So, what are you guys talking about? This Charlie Parker series is really great. Director Hooper uses very raw style filming and worked less in Les Mis. For Cats, its escapism to raw realism is catastrophic. Yeah, like Les Mis, I had kind of a problem. It just felt like the awkward, just people breaking into song randomly kind of thing. And I did appreciate that they did all of these live takes and they didn't do lip syncing. It's quite brave, I thought. But yeah, looks like it didn't translate well. So you guys are having a discussion in the chat. That's fine. I'm thinking it's an hour and a half. I'm wondering why I'm flagging. I'm getting a little bit on the tired side. And I think that's because I've been talking, except for a 10-minute break. Which, by the way, so if I'm starting to talk about wrap-up, it means I've probably got 20 minutes left. During my break with you guys, I went out, refilled my water, made my coffee, and took out my laundry. And that's what I did in my break. I went into my laundry, my washer, because I don't have a dryer. So if I want, clean sheets and towels for my guest, I need to plan that out a good 36 hours in advance. So yeah, if you wanted to know what I do, what the star does on the show, what she does during her break, she takes out and hangs her laundry. That's what I'm doing when I am not broadcasting to you guys on a Sunday. Well, I feel like this has been mostly fluff. So I want to do a little bit of serious stuff before we wrap up the day and get involved in my self-obsessed American politics again. Hope that's all right. We've got, saw this person put this up about Andy No. That I'm not entirely sure where this was broadcast, but they put up a series of tweets and comments on who Andy No was and why he's a big jerk face. So yeah, that went on the side of some building. And then I think they have here the actual, yeah, these look like the comments themselves. So let's have a. Andy No was dropped from Portland State University student paper, The Vanguard, for telling a destructive half-truth about a Muslim student's public statements. Okay. And his tweet was picked up and spread uncritically by Breitbart. By the way, I'm not going to read all of this because time and my voice. Andy No, POS. When people say Andy No provides kill lists for Atomwaffen, this is what they are talking about. The research by Ian Lenihan was nothing more than a Twitter graph of Antifa tweets by journalists who also follow Antifa accounts. The article accuses some of them of having close ties to anti-fascist groups. Following those accounts is part of their job as journalists. Atomwaffen Division, a neo-Nazi militant right-wing group, issued a video called the Sunset the Media, targeting these journalists. The death threats started both in social media and real life. People had to scrub the internet, change their locks, and in some cases, move, including out of the country. Andy No is a POS. And these are representatives of the threats journalists received. And so you go, a threat, which I'm not going to read on air because demonetization and everything else. Andy No continues to leave information out of his reporting and deceptively edits videos to make right-wing political points and attempt to discredit anti-fascism. Recently, he inferred that an elderly gentleman was attacked by anti-fascists on the 29th of June for no reason. Note that he does not give the man's name, as he does with people on the left, and neglects to say that the man is a member of a right-wing militant, and some unpronounceable name. So this, yeah, I saw this. I thought I would. Right. And he also neglects to mention that he was wearing a helmet. That fedora is a hard plastic helmet and was brandishing a weapon at people. We could go on, but you get the point. Andy No is a threat to our community and provides kill lists for Atomwaffen. So there you go. Andy No, POS. We knew that already, but just restating it. Sorry, this is like bummer stuff, but you know that I follow the R culture. I can't say it for demonetization. The R culture of the Catholic Church. This is another element. It continues. It's still, the cover-up goes on. Nearly 1,000 credibly accused priests left off the Catholic Church's sex abuse list. Please don't give money or support to the Catholic Church. They are a global ring to cover up a conspiracy to harm children. Let's see. This is interesting. So a new ad campaign is targeting Republican senators like Susan Collins and calling for them to break with Mitch McConnell and advocate for witnesses in Trump's trial in the Senate. And it was paid for by a Republican advocacy group. But this is interesting to me because it's actually like conservatives, I'll say. I don't know if this is hopefully it won't be a video. Don't be a video. Ugh, I wish it were an article. I can't play that. I can read out an article. I can't play that. I know they started this. There was a bunch of people who just started basically a super PAC to bring down Trump, and I'm curious as to whether or not this is the same group. But I'm not going to condemn conservatives, small c conservatives, who stand up for the Constitution and who, first of all, want to protect the Republic. And then we can have like fights about other things. But the first thing is they acknowledge that Trump is acting like a king. Trump is defying congressional oversight, which undermines the entire structure of the checks and balances system, and do not want the idea of monarchical presidency to become the norm. And I see myself as allied with those people on those issues, which is really hard for me to say, but it's true. When it comes to David Frum or Charlie Sykes, Nicole Wallace, Joe Scarborough, Michael Steele, former RNC chair, people who stand up as patriots for our constitutional principles. I might disagree with their politics, but I do not disagree with their premise as to what our country should be. I think for a lot of those people, they bought in to the lie that the GOP wasn't about maintaining the white supremacist status quo in America. They bought the self-reassuring lie that white people tell themselves, that the status quo it's not so bad, it's not so racist, when it's really, really, really racist. And it's really unproportional, it's very unbalanced when it comes to disadvantaging non-white people in America. And realizing that it's the principles of equality and also the constitutional protections of keeping a state of tension between the two main branches that's arbitrated by the third branch. And the GOP are basically looking to destroy that. They want to stack the judiciary with people who will uphold the white supremacist status quo, developed by a bunch of, developed by the founders who were themselves keenly interested in building an entire government that kept white men supreme, in power, and controlling the rest of the population. I mean, they gave themselves rights, they gave themselves equality, they gave themselves an acknowledgement of their humanity that they were unwilling to extend to other citizens in the United States. So I see Michael Steele was surprised he was picked for RNC chair because he's African American. I think, again, he was one of those people, Michael Steele, from my recollection, who really bought into the autopsy after the Romney loss. He's definitely this is definitely identity politics. Michael Steele was not only selected because he was a black man, but he was very much, I think it influenced people's decisions. Voting for the RNC chair to have a black man criticizing a black president. And the problem with Michael Steele was that he actually, he didn't buy into the white supremacist narrative. He had bought that, oh, we're all just equal lie that white people tell themselves to make themselves feel better about racism. And he got caught up in that narrative, thinking, oh, the GOP really isn't about it's the Democrats who say we're racist, but there's not so many racists in the GOP. Oh, yeah, there were. Oh, yeah, there were. And he bought into this idea that we need to market the GOP to Hispanic voters. We need to be able to market the GOP to black voters. And so what we should be doing is we should be modifying our message to make our brand more appealing to non-white voters. And then the GOP establishment were just like, but we're a party of white supremacy. I mean, they didn't say that part out loud, but they understood, or let's say, they had the perspective that there is one lie you sell the public about keeping your guns safe and ending abortion, but then there's the real agenda, like tax breaks and keeping white people in power. Right, so you have your talking points for your populist support, and then you have your real agenda. And Michael Steele didn't realize that the real agenda wasn't just the stuff Democrats made up or talked about and accused Republicans of. That was the actual agenda. So I'm not that hopeful, honestly. After John McCain was a complete letdown, he had one good vote, in his last years, where he stood up against the attempts to destroy, I think it was the Obamacare vote or something. But he was not a profile in courage. He sparred with Trump, but he also played footsie with the same supremacist jerks that are his Trump's base. And when it comes to, Mitt Romney, I have no faith that Mitt Romney has a spine. I have yet to see any evidence that Mitt Romney has a spine. Jeff Flake talked a great game. When it actually came to it, didn't do anything. Didn't have the courage of his convictions. He only got courage after he resigned. He got real, and that's not real courage. At that point, that's just barking after, the barn door's been closed. So forget him. Susan Collins, again, no trust that she is not going to stab the American people in the back like she did with Kavanaugh. And so perhaps, even with Lisa Murkowski making noises about not liking the fact that Mitch McConnell has already admitted he's going to just rig the trial and have a sham trial, then there's a... I don't believe that this sort of like squawking in the press will produce actual results until I see it. Until I actually see them stand up to their own party or stand up for their own voters. I have no faith in that whatsoever. So we'll see what happens. Nancy Pelosi, again, I think she's brilliant. I know a lot of people don't like her because she does 90% of the things they like, but then the 10% they don't like, they just hate her for that 10%. And they won't acknowledge, or they'll, say, she did this right, but she did these 10 things wrong. There's always going to be haters. Haters going to hate. So you can't really do anything about that. But to anyone who looks back at this period of history, they're going to understand that Nancy Pelosi, and so Mitch McConnell, the way that he runs his Senate and uses his powers is very different from the way that Nancy Pelosi uses her power, but she uses the power she has very, very effectively. And in particular, it's not that difficult to get Donald Trump to just lose his stuff. I remember learning in international relations, the first time I heard Nancy Pelosi wasn't going to send over the articles of impeachment, I remembered a line that I learned in my international relations course: any idiot can outweight an American. Americans generally are way less patient. And I think in this case we were talking about the comparison of Chinese policy to American policy. That Chinese policy is kind of conceived of in decades, long term, and American policies are conceived of in the next congressional cycle of 2 years. And they want immediate results, and they want movement right away, and they want everything to happen at once. And so any idiot can outweight an American. And that was what I thought of when Nancy Pelosi decided to hold off on the articles of impeachment, because she just knows Trump is entirely impatient. Completely impatient. And he's been losing his stuff all over Twitter, all over the holidays. He's just tweeting a bunch of ridiculous things. He tweeted out the name of the whistleblower and then deleted it. He is Laura Loomer, right? Laura Loomer is, as you guys remember, she was the one who chained herself to the Twitter building. He's just gone basically completely nuts. So, yes, Nancy Pelosi just knows that making Donald Trump wait for anything is torture for him, and that he doesn't like it, he chafes at it, and he is more likely to concede or do something to give you what you want to get what he wants. So, let's see. Michael Steele, okay, I'm going past here. I'm looking at the chat now. Tory MPs who seem to be even worse than the BME, those black and minority ethnic Tory MPs who all seem to be worse than the white ones. There is the whole zealous thing, like when you convert over, or you have to demonstrate externally, your ideology, that can be part of it, I think. Do you see the reporting on Mike Pompeo saying Corbyn couldn't be allowed to win? No, I didn't see that. But you weren't talking to me, you talked to Mithril. But let's see. Did someone say that, Thatcher was such a passion in 52, so was fighting Thatcher's policies? One thing on that, Vicky, that I noticed in my focus group and interview research pre-election is, so I recall when I started off in 2005, during my very first focus group, and everyone in the room, that mentioned Thatcher had a personal experience with Thatcher at that point, or grew up in a household that was affected or was aware of it. And now there's a whole cohort, now it's 14, 15 years later, of people who don't remember Thatcher's policies. And they hear their parents talk about it or their grandparents talk about it, but they don't have the lived experience. And that's one of the things that I sort of point to when I'm noticing this sort of decline in class identification. Before, like Tories and Labour or working class and the Toffs, there were people had internalized where they stood in relation to those labels. And increasingly, those labels have become weaker and weaker. And without strong trade unions, with the rise of the service sector, people are thinking of themselves as working class, but not union working class. And that has led to them being open to consider other parties besides Labour. So that, I think, cohort thing, and the Labour for decades really rode on that anti-Thatcher sentiment and the residue of it. And still, I think within certain cohorts it's there. But you can't keep that policy up for 40 years. You can keep it up for 40 years, but at some point it's just not going to have the same salience as it does, in 2000 and almost 20, as it did in the 1980s. So just some thoughts. Yeah, class solidarity is definitely being lost. I think identity politics in forms that are not class. People, I think, see themselves, being white and British, white British, as more of an identity than the fact that they earn a salary or they earn an hourly wage makes them part of the working class against the business class. A little bit of a end of the year problem. We can't watch this because it's copyrighted stuff, but there's not currently a lot of polls in the first part in the parts of December. So we're going to start to see now as we enter into the January, really get into the caucus and primary season now, start to see more polling, but things on the ground are kind of thin. There's also, I don't know if you guys noticed this, we saw it in 2016 too, where everyone kind of becomes the flavor of the month for a little while, and then they're put up on the media glare, and then they get pulled down. So initially you had, I guess you want to go back to one of the early debates, Kamala Harris had a moment about busing with Biden, and she kind of had this moment. She had this criticism, but then she backed off of it, and she didn't really have a follow-up counterpunch or someplace to go with that, and kind of lost her momentum. And then I would say, and you remember this actually with 2016. So you had the Jeb Bush wave or phase. Then there was like the Marco Rubio phase, and then there was the Ted Cruz phase, and then Donald Trump was just sort of bumbling, going along and developing a greater and greater base of support over time. That's my recollection of it. And in a similar way, you have this, whoever looks like the current king or queen of the pack, they get all the smoke, they get the criticism, and we'll see where they go. So first we had, it was like Kamala in the first debate. And then Elizabeth Warren got really hot for a while, and she's got a plan for that, everything. But then she brought out her Medicare for All, which was super expensive. I can't remember if she eliminated health care, it's a private health insurance in that legislation. I think she did. She was quite bold, shall we say, in her proposal, as opposed to a transition, modification of Obamacare with a public option to join Medicare. But, and so she was like kind of a hot ticket for a while, and then got a lot of criticism for her plan when the numbers were brought out. And after her, it was Buttigieg. He became kind of a hot property, and a little bit of Amy Klobuchar. And now it seems like there's sort of Bernie had his heart attack, which dipped his support for a while, and then he sort of flew under the radar. And it seems like it's now going to be Bernie's turn. I think Bernie's he's got to turn, he said he would turn over his health records about his heart attack before the end of the year. And he hasn't done that yet. And he does have this problem of promising he's going to turn over things that are personal information and then not doing it. He did that with his taxes for the longest time. And so we'll see whether or not he actually keeps that pledge or is hoping that people will forget that he made it. So we'll see. But I'm waiting for now the Sanders turn to have his Medicare proposals examined, because I don't think they're going to be that much different than Elizabeth Warren's, but I think they're going to be way more expensive. I think he's going to be more radical in his approach than she would be, and his policies really haven't properly been vetted by the press yet. He's kind of been flying under the radar. So, oh yeah, you got Joe Biden, and it's creepy touching. He had his moment too. So we will see now as we're coming into the final stretches of first Iowa and then New Hampshire, which, as we know, really skew white. They're very, very white states in general. But the base of the Democratic Party is definitely, like, if you want to talk about the heart and soul of the Democratic Party, that's women of color. They turn out at amazing rates, and they vote consistently with the party. So once we hit South Carolina, and then we get off to Nevada, we get more diversity and something that actually looks more like the Democratic primary electorate. So, yeah, I think there's a good point there, Mithril, that you need to turn community organizing into positive, actual stuff that does things, not just try and politicize people. That's what campaigns. I mean, the job of campaign is to politicize people to get them out to vote. It's a short-term thing. A community organizing should be about longer-term goals, with an understanding of power and exerting power, not merely at the ballot box, but how other ways you can pressure politicians or exercise power in order to get what you want. Community organizing and a political campaign, they use similar principles, but they are completely different animals. All right, so I joined the Labour Party last week. I'm worried that it's going to put centrists in charge, and I wanted to vote against that. Hey, 250. Well, let me know how that goes. I know that there is a current debate. I actually made this point on Serious Inquiries Only. I did a podcast with Thomas Smith when they asked, are there lessons to be learned from Corbyn for the United States? And things with Brexit were so unique. In that way, I don't think there's any parallel with Brexit that you can find in American politics on the left. But what I did say, and I did identify as a potential problem, is the fact that the left of the Labour Party and the central part, the center and moderate parts of the Labour Party, are very far apart on their vision of how things should be structured and where energy should be put and how things should be talked about. So I know that, hey, Mithril, thanks for coming by and for participating. Appreciate it, and have a good week until next week. I'll be hosting a guest, but I can still put on a Sunday show, I'm pretty sure. At least for an hour next Sunday. So I've heard from Labour Party people who feel that the left direction of Labour is correct, that it's what the country needs. It's also the way to bring about the best possible society across Britain for people. Although generally I'm going to say they tend to think about things in an English framework, not so much in a Scottish Welsh devolved framework, but also there's a lot of people in England. Why did you get that? But anyway, and the way to address the left-leaning structure of the party is to get more people on the left engaged, and then activate those people by going into the communities and getting more centrists and moderates to agree with the policies. Then I've heard from Labour activists. These tend to be older people who have been Labour all their life and feel like the party has moved away from them. People who feel like they weren't necessarily happy with Tony Blair. They didn't like the Iraq War. They thought he went maybe too far over to the right. But generally, they don't really like the leftward direction that the party is currently taking, and it feels like it's not connected with its Labour roots as much as it used to be, at least according to their understanding of it, which is very much framed in the Thatcher experience of living through the Thatcher years. So the parallels I did say that I saw between the UK and the US and the left is I can see the same debates between moderate, center, left-leaning party people and party supporters, and the more solidly leaning hard left to anti-capitalism now types within the Labour Party who think that's the direction the party needs to go in. And I see similar fights between, let's say, the Sanders-Warren wings of the party. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard and Yang are like their own little wing. That's a fringe part of the Democratic Party. But that progressive part of the party saying, if you just give us the power, we'll impose. This is how it sounds to me, the Sanders and the Warren position. We know what's best for you. And if you give us power, we're going to radically transform and restructure healthcare, in this case, in America, because we think we know best. And your preferences will follow our performance, the lead of our policy performance. When we get power and we deliver these really great policies, then people will really like them. And then there are the more centrist people who are like, well, hey, I also support universal health care as a long-term goal, but I recognize that people in swing states are going to be very suspicious of the getting rid of the only health care they've ever known without a tried and tested model. Yes, Medicare is available as a program, but it's currently being underfunded. In the long term, it's not going to be sustainable. So you're going to have to overhaul how Medicare is funded just to keep it solvent, like in perpetuity. And then you need to add a whole bunch of new people to it. And all of those people are going to be flooding into doctors who accept Medicare because some doctors don't. So putting a huge disruption into the healthcare system, some people are like, well, look, we've got Obamacare. There are things we can fix about Obamacare, like the co-op system was screwed over, and we need to fix how people can do healthcare cooperatives. There's competition across straight lines. You need to stop these internal state monopolies where a couple insurance companies can offer their plans and no one else can compete. There's a lot of ways that you can break down the profits and make it more competitive to bring the prices down. And we start with that, and then we move on to something more comprehensive. And so I see that moderate left and then left and hard left, shall we say, fights in labor and in the Democratic Party in the United States having similar shapes. Not necessarily similar issues. They're debating different things in terms of policy, but the divisions and the tensions between the more progressive, more radical change and the more moderate, gradual change types happening. So we'll see where it goes. Is Gordon Ramsay in for Brexit? I don't know. I know that Jamie Oliver, who's another British chef, his restaurants aren't doing that well. Your daughters are both labor activists. That's great. Oh, Tulsi Gabbard is garbage. Yeah. Tulsi Gabbard went to Fox to talk about Obama. Wow. Talk about not surprising at all. Yeah, she's trash. She's clearly like one of those people who runs for the fringes, sort of like in order to say, oh, look, so America is investing $70 billion on the military, yet people say we can't afford to make education free for everyone. Germany, I think, has a pretty good model for free higher education. And I think, I'm glad you said here, the make education free and not make college free. One of the big problems that I have with the way that debate on higher education is framed, it's always about college tuition. And it's framed in terms of a 4-year degree, which is so middle class, upper class ways of thinking about it. And I think, obviously, I'm sure the policies are more expansive to community college and vocational. But I think if we could change the phrasing from college tuition to continuing education fees, post-second, because it's not just about going to get a 4-year degree. I think all education is really valuable, whether that's, honestly, learning how to quilt or taking a cooking class at a local community college or an associate's degree, in a program as doing English lit. I think both are valuable, but it should, vocational education, I think ongoing education or continuing education, that is quite encompassing, because so I don't want to denigrate the 4-year degrees in order to elevate the vocational degrees. I think that's a false choice that people often frame, not everyone should go to college, and people should be proud of their blue collar works, and you can make a lot of money as a plumber, and all these things are true. But I think that I don't accept the premise, and I'm not saying you are putting this out there, but I don't accept the premise of higher education, a 4-year degree, is somehow in competition with getting an associate's degree, or going on and learning on-the-job training to become an electrical wiring person who wires people's houses safely for electricity. I think both are demanding skill sets in different ways, and so, but that's just a personal thing. Oh, you wrote it as you said it. Okay, yeah, no worries. So what do you get? Is 250 saying left-leaning parties keep ending up with ridiculously broad supporter bases because the right-wing parties are increasingly just for borderline fascists. Yine. So I think you're right. If you think about the political spectrum, 250. So let's do left-right political spectrum. Political spectrum. The left-right, as we know, I don't know if this is even a really good way of thinking about politics anymore. But the premise, so we're not going to talk about PR systems, because in a PR system, it's completely different. Just show me a line. Thank you. All right. Diagram of the political spectrum. Authoritarian and democratic, from radical to, I would say this is reactionary. See, I think, and they've got liberals in the middle. Interesting. So, let's see. You've got socialists being transformative. All right, so the way that I think about the political spectrum is not dissimilar from this, although this is using 3-dimensional space as opposed to just across a line. But it's not 4-dimensional. You could have like an economic component in there to make it 4-dimensional, but how do you show a political cube of political ideas? That's an interesting challenge. Model that in 3D. So radical to me means you want to transform the current structures. Reactionary, which is what should be here, is to not only preserve what currently exists, but in many ways go back to react against recent changes. So reactionaries, I think Sargon of Akkad, for instance, is a reactionary. I think most Trump supporters are reactionaries. Evangelical Christians are reactionaries. It's not only that they just want to say, okay, status quo here and now. And it's like, no, we need to go back to when we could discriminate against people for being gay. We need to, discriminate against adoption and letting people stay, all that kind of stuff. They want to take us back. Authoritarian, obviously strongman versus populist, democratic. In which case, liberal here is more like, it's not the economic liberal. It would be more, I guess you would have here capitalist tolerant, but socially progressive. So people who don't want to overthrow capitalism, but do want to see legal progress in society. Whereas, the socialists want to transform the economy and social structures. The conservative wants to maintain the economic structure and harken back to older values or traditional values. They want to impose that. The more they want to impose their values on everyone else, the more fascist they become, the more that the socialists want to move away from popularly derived legitimacy into state-run, top-down power structures. It's interesting, there's kind of like, where are the radical Democrats? Where is that dimension on here? I guess that would be social democracy, maybe, over here, maybe, like there. And the reactionary democratic, there's no such thing. I don't think you get people who are, oh no, I guess in this way you could get, I would say, well, all right, here, I'm going to, boom. I don't think who designed it knows what communism is. I think here what they're talking about is a structured Soviet-style communism or Chinese-style communism, state-derived, not communist communes as in local groups ground up. They're talking about authoritarian as in state-run. So I think the people you're thinking about would be like down here, right? More like a communism that was informed by or grew out of a social democracy. But a reactionary democratic, I would say, maybe is something like initially when like you get elections for Hezbollah, but then immediately the government takes over and turns itself into an authoritarian fascist kind of conservative government that wants to basically do all the same horrible things of oppression, but to other people that have been done to them. So that's an interesting way to think about it. How did we get here? I think. Oh, that's right. We talk about that broadly left-leaning parties have wider bases. So in my experience of dealing with the population, generally people have, I mean, they'll tell you that they have a sense of their economic preferences and their social preference that make a lot of sense. And internally they are somewhat consistent, but people just generally don't have, as you just pick a random person out of a crowd, really deep understanding of the way structures inform lives. So the way that structured capitalism touches every part of their day. They just might know that pay is bad and working conditions are bad. And I think there was a person in focus group in 2010 who was discussing the alternative vote system, which is way more complicated than just first past the post. And he said, the confused mind says no. And I think people are small c conservative, not necessarily because they don't want the progress, but because they don't have, I don't even want to say that they don't have the understanding of the issues, like eliminating all in private. Let's say something pretty radical for the United States, the idea of ending all private insurance companies and only providing government-based health care. When people hear that, they might not like the idea of, private insurance. They may have bad experiences with private insurance. They might know tales of people who had real problems with private health insurance companies. So it's not that they're small c conservative in defending the status quo because they like health insurance companies. They're just not willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, let's completely get rid of the system we currently have, which is crap but does work to some extent, and replace it with something that people are promising is going to be awesome, but I have no idea how it's going to get paid for, and I have no idea how it's going to be implemented, and how the last time when they did Obamacare, the website didn't work for the first 4 months. So how are they going to organize Medicare for an entire country if they can't even plan out like signups on a website? And so it's not that they oppose the idea, it's that the change is so radical and requires a big leap of faith with institutions that they don't trust. Most people don't trust politicians, and they don't trust government can produce what it wants. And so their resistance isn't because they love insurance companies or they're horrible people who love, capitalist profits. It's that they're not convinced that there is an alternative. There hasn't been one demonstrated. And so I think when we look to get those voters in, that hesitancy there, that is where they go to someone like a Joe Biden versus Elizabeth Warren. Because, yeah, Joe isn't great, but we know him. We know what we're getting. He's a known quantity. He's not going to disrupt our lives too much. And yeah, it might be nice to have universal health care, but, I don't want to be the guinea pigs on which, I don't want myself and my family to be the guinea pigs on which they do this experiment. So I think that's the challenge for the left, is where we have these great ideas, but then we have to face the reality of the voters who are deeply suspicious of government's ability to deliver anything, and they're unconvinced by cult of personality. So, is nationalism a right-leaning trait? I guess you could think so. That's from Allie. Are all authoritarian countries possess nationalist characteristics, including China? I would say maybe here's a question about necessary and sufficient, and also transitive properties, maybe is the right phrase. I don't think, it depends on how you define nationalism. I mean, I'm sorry to pull this out, but there is a sense of trying to distinguish between nationalism and patriotism. All right, so like here. Got the view of George Orwell. Patriotism is a devotion to a place and a particular way of life, which one believes to be the best in the world, but no one wishes to force upon other people. And then nationalism, I think, is the one you want to force on other people. I think, yes, right. So pride in your country, pride in, not just pride, but sort of a sense of deriving a moral superiority through the virtue of what has happened in your country in the past that you didn't do. Stolen valor, maybe like not in the traditional sense, but so much as bragging on the works of others and claiming credit for them. So let's see what the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy has to say about it. And then I really should go because, oh my gosh, it's been more than 2 hours, guys. How did I just natter on for 2 hours? Nationalism is generally used to describe two phenomena. Great. So this already makes it a harder term to work with. One, the attitude that the members of a nation have when they care about their national identity, which is not bad. And two, the actions that the members of a nation take when seeking to achieve or sustain self-determination. One raises questions about the concept of a nation or national identity, which is often defined in terms of common origin, ethnicity, or cultural ties, and specifically about whether an individual's membership in a nation should be regarded as non-voluntary or voluntary. This is not the kind of nationalism I'm thinking of. Two, raises questions about whether self-determination must be understood as involving having full statehood with complete authority over domestic and international affairs, or whether something less is required. Wow, that's not at all the kind of nationalism I'm thinking about. That seems like a political theory, much more political theory derived, much less about psychological notions and more about distinguishing, here we go, nations from states. Those are very interesting. Here they say an example. The Native American Iroquois constitute a nation, but not a state, since they do not possess the requisite political authority over their internal or external affairs. If the members of the Iroquois nation were to strive to form a sovereign state in the effort to preserve their identity as a people, they would be exhibiting a state-focused nationalism. Whew, this is high-level philosophical notions of social constructs like nation, states, citizenship, identity. What does it mean to have a common cultural heritage, a common ethnicity? That's kind of not the sort of simplistic nationalism versus patriotism that I was thinking. When does the SIO come out? I'm not sure. I did it last week. I'll just quick here check for you. Serious inquiries only. I have no idea. Normally Thomas will tell me when it comes out, but then again he's been kind of busy. So this was from, that's the debate one. Trump impeached. It looks like it's not out yet. So keep an eye on Serious Inquiries only. Guys, how did I manage to natter away over 2 hours? I'm astounded at my ability to blather on endlessly, it seems. So I think if 250 is on their way out the door, I think it's probably time for me to get going too. Did a full 2 hours, so I'm definitely back in the saddle again, back to my normal weekend winter show. I hope you guys enjoyed this casual little chat. As I said, I don't do much planning, but if there are things that you want to do in the future, I am open to it if you have some suggestions. I did talk about doing that Sargon thing mostly because it's easier to do it live than to make a video, and it really deserves a rebuttal. But anyway, let's see. The next time we talk, people, it will be a new decade. I haven't appreciated the extent to which this has been, the end of the teens, because we had the aughties and then the teenies, and now we have the 20s. So I don't know if they're gonna be the roaring 20s. My hair is all set though for the 1920s look. I'm bringing that style back, not at all. But yeah, the next time we talk will be 2020. And so maybe you can tell me if you guys decided to make any New Year's resolutions or challenges for yourself. I think I've pretty much talked myself into this goal of doing a video on a Romanesque cathedral, mostly to push myself in terms of my storyboarding and my videos, but you guys will be able to watch them. And thank you for being here. Thank you for stopping by. And it's been a rough year, but it has been interesting. I know, exciting as well, but it's been an interesting year. So, yes, I keep saying I'm going to leave, and then I never do. I will see you guys again on January 5th. By the way, I will be making an appearance, I believe, on the Keck show, because the person I'm hosting, coming here to do some research for his degree, is Cog. So while he's in town, I'm giving him my couch, and I know they have a Let Them Eat Keck that is scheduled, because they were meant to do it this weekend, but then Kevin being Kevin, I don't know what happened, the schedule fell apart, and I talked to Kevin already, saying that Cog can use this setup right here to do the show, but also they then invited me to be part of it. So we'll see. I have to kind of reorganize my mic setup a little bit, but you can look for me then on Let Them Eat Keck. Kevin got a hold of me actually just in the last couple hours about doing maybe another happy hour. I've got a patron hangout coming up at 7 o'clock tonight, so it could be, hopefully I won't do 3 live shows today, but if you don't have anything else to do, you can come back for the patron hangout, which will be taking place at 7 o'clock my time, so that's in 5 hours. I really need to end this show, and maybe some happy hours before New Year's too, but until January 5th, I've been Christy. You guys have been awesome. Thank you so much for stopping by as we enter the rioting 20s, as a Cassiopeia mentions here in the chat. Yeah, I've been Christy. You've been awesome. Have a fabulous Sunday until the next time we see each other. Until then, I have to do my wave while I'm ending the stream on a different screen. You guys are awesome. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.